Mystifying kiss. Samudra's thoughts were becoming coherent. He understood that by some mysterious occurrence he had been in the accident site, rescued Sonali, and in return she had kissed him. It was not as if Samudra was not interested to attend the chemistry class in his college that morning, but his mind was elsewhere. He was not able to concentrate in his thoughts and emotions since last night. During the late night he was woken up from his sleep by ringing of his mobile. He tried to pick up the call, but it went silent. He could barely open his eyes, relapsing into deep sleep. He couldn't recollect how long he must have been sleeping when suddenly he felt a touch on his face. It was totally dark. Even street lights were not burning, so no illumination had seeped in from the sides of the closed curtains. His sleep disturbed with this touch. He woke up, not fully, but enough to understand that something soft and affectionate was touching his lips. Lightly. It was mildly wet too, and there was this faint smell of perfume. It seemed familiar. That woke him up fully, and his conscious mind signaled an extraordinary experience. He was being kissed on his lips by someone. A woman, perhaps, because he could feel the nearness of her face, rhythmic flow of slightly warm breath and touch of her hair. Nothing could be seen. Everything was sense and fragrance. He got up with alacrity. This is not something which could be possible. Strangely, nobody seemed to be there. He turned and switched on the side light. Looking around with a tinge of apprehension, he found that the room had no other person. The single-point bulb had thrown lights and shades around, but everything looked normal, just as it was before he had gone to bed. He got up, looked around again, checked the door, peered down under the bed and parted the window curtains. Nothing. But he frowned. He could still smell the lady's perfume. He sat down on the bed. His heart was faintly palpitating. What is this? Who is here? Is it a dream? He touched his lips. There was touch of lipstick on his fingers. What will I do? Many thoughts crossed his mind. He then noticed that his hands were dirty, as if he had done some intense physical activity. But he had done nothing of that sort in recent days. How did that happen? Picking up the mobile, he looked at the missed call which had come earlier in the night. It was from Sonali, lady of his long passionate affair. Called her, but there was no response. Few more calls turned futile. Rest of the night Samudra couldn't sleep. He was feeling awful, uncertain and scared. The morning sunlight didn't make him feel any better. He called Sonali again with the same result. Sitting down on the chair, he was moodily contemplating as to what he could do. The experience of the night was something which was beyond his comprehension. His mobile rang. It was Sarah on the line. "Did you hear the news?" Saraf's agitated voice floated in. Sonali has met with an accident last night while returning in her car. Passers-by brought her driver was drunk and is dead. She is in the local hospital. Come quick. Samudra sat still, stunned. What has happened to his lady love? He couldn't believe. His mouth turned dry with worry. God, let her be all right. His hands went up in prayer. He came out, took his motorbike and drove fast towards the local hospital. The early morning traffic was sparse. His last night experience came back to him, and he realized with a shock that the smell and the touch of that unknown lady could have been of Sonali. But how was that possible? On reaching the hospital, he ran towards the emergency services, saw Saraf and two of his other friends standing outside the ICU. Stopping, his breath coming in fast, only thing he could say, "How is she?" He caught Saraf's shoulder to steady himself. Friends supported him and made him sit on the nearby chair. She is recovering. Don't worry, she will be fine. Saraf's voice had a comforting tone. Others nodded. The doctor came about an hour afterwards. She is recovering. He smiled. Very fortunate that her head and other vital organs were virtually unharmed. The fact that she got thrown out of the car door on the impact of the accident saved her life. She has gained consciousness and you guys can meet her sometime later. A sense of relief went through Samudra and other friends. Time wore on. Samudra walked away towards the lawn of the hospital, alone. He wanted to reconcile the ethereal experience he had and the fact of the accident of Sonali. He was by now certain that it was Sonali who had given him that kiss in the darkness. But that had no rational explanation. He didn't feel like discussing this with his friends. They may say that it was figment of imagination or dream. He was not prepared to accept that. Around noon, Samudra entered the ICU and went near the bed where Sonali was recuperating. Her eyes, large and beautiful, were open with a tinge of dreadness in them. The medical equipment, many wires coming out of them and strapped to her body, were indicating various parameters. But thankfully positive. He took her hand and smiled at her. "How are you feeling?" She remained quiet for some time, staring at him unblinkingly, then spoke in a very low voice. Her voice was melodic. "Thank you for saving me. It is good that you responded to my mobile." It was then Samudra's turn to stare at her. "What are you saying, Sonali? How have I saved you? Didn't even know that you had accident till this morning. Saraf called me." She shook her head. "No. At the time of accident, I saw you on the road. As soon as the car hit the tree, you came running and opened the car door, lifted me out. You were so fast. You saved my life. Then I passed out. She smiled faintly at his astonished face. Remember my kiss when I was in your arms? Don't you recall that also? She closed her eyes in exhaustion. Samudra thoughts were becoming coherent. He understood that by some mysterious occurrence he had been in the accident site, rescued Sonali, and in return she had kissed him in thankfulness and love. None of them were near each other physically, but both had physical experience. Strange phenomenon does happen in this world. More so, can love come to rescue even when bodily far away? Who knows? He gently kissed her. That familiar feeling of the night now overwhelmed him. Thank you for watching.